I want you to think of one idea, an idea that you've had that's been out of reach. The idea that you've had with a little more time could be possible. We are here to give you the acceleration you need to put that within reach. Hey everybody, my name is Joseph. I'm the engineering manager leading our AI tools team, and we are excited to talk to you today about accelerating your workflows with AI. Here's what we've got for you today. I'm going to give you a rundown of our AI tools. Mike Geig is going to come up and give you an overview of Unity's AI Gateway. We'll pass it off to our developer advocate, Dilmer Valesios, who's been hacking with these tools and has some awesome demos to show you. Then our AI tools tech lead, Zach Bowling, will give us an overview of how we're thinking about the future. Lastly, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. Let's get started. Ship faster and stay in the flow. The real enemy is context switching. Tabs, docs, logs, perf traces, asset hunts, all of these take you out of the IDE. We're here to help you stay in the IDE, reduce friction, and accelerate your development workflows. How are we going to do this? We're releasing 4 tools. HCDB, the Horizon Debug Bridge, a CLI tool with all the features necessary to connect to the Quest headset, connect to the device, search documentation, assist in performance optimization, and more. Then, the Horizon OS Developer MCP, an MCP server built into the CLI tool with all the access to those tools and more. In addition, we also have an extension to the Unity AI Gateway MCP. These MCP servers lay the foundation of all of our agentic workflows. Then, we have an agentic tools repository. We're open sourcing an agentic tools repository with skills and plugins for Claude, Codex, Unity, and more. Some of the top skills in this repository include VRC checks, API upgrade paths, and Android to Quest app porting. Lastly, we've got a VS Code extension. We want to meet you where you are with AI tools that meet your workflows. All of these are available right now. Now, I've used the word agentic a few times. What do we mean by this? Not needing to take your headset off to do simple tasks. Not needing to walk through your app just to debug a particular scene. The mundane parts of your job. Here's the model. You define the intent. An agent executes tools and actions against that intent. Then an agent tests and verifies that your intent has been accomplished. You approve the changes. After Mike, Dermot is going to show us an example of how this works in action. This is just the start. We want you to do more with AI tools. We will be releasing a chatbot on all of our developer services for anyone on your team to get knowledgeable answers. We will be adding MCP tools for publishing, playtesting, analytics, and more, so that you can leverage AI throughout the entire development lifecycle. And we're continuing to expand our agentic workflows, our agentic-enabled workflows, so that you can do more with AI. Zach will conclude this session with some forward-looking thoughts on our agentic workflows, how we've shifted our product development, and how we're investing more going forward. But enough talk, more doing. Let's see these tools in action. Mike, you want to come up?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Geig, Principal Advocate at Unity Technologies. And today, I want to talk a little bit about Unity's AI offerings. And we can talk about this in 2 ways. So we have the Unity AI Assistant, and we have the AI Gateway. So the AI Assistant is our set of tools in Editor that has all our agents and skills and workflows. It's where you actually do the AI work. And the really cool thing about this is it has full project context. It is aware of all your project settings. It is aware of all of your code. It is aware of your preferences, your profiler information, your performance, everything. And that context allows us to do really cool stuff. It allows us to understand what you're trying to do end to end and give you the capabilities to do that faster and better. One of the things that I really like that you're going to see here soon coming out from us is this annotation tool, which allows us to say, hey, this thing, what is wrong with this thing? And the assistant can visually look at your editor and see what it is you're talking about. Or say, remove all the trees from this area and just circle it. And it understands, which is something very cool that's provided by the context of the AI assistant. Then we have the AI gateway, and the AI gateway works with the AI assistant, and this is what exposes Unity's MCP. So let's say you want to use Unity's AI assistant, but you don't want to use Unity's agent. You want to use Claude Code or Cursor or Codex or whatever. The AI gateway is what allows you to swap that out. Furthermore, you can swap the agent and you can swap the models of that agent for a lot of control, sort of bring your own agent process. So let's look at some use cases real quick here. So this is very basic, but I like to bring this one up all the time. The Ask Assistant is basically your chatbot. You're going to ask it questions, you're going to talk to it. But what's really cool about Unity's AI assistant here is that, again, it understands your project. So instead of saying, how would I do a thing, you can say, how would I do this thing? What is happening here? Why is this thing doing this? Tell me about this project. And that's really great when learning. In my role, I get handed demo projects all the time from different teams at Unity. And it's great to just be able to say, tell me about this project. What's all the code in this project? Tell me how this was set up. And the AI can tell me everything about this project to get me up and running quickly. I can test ideas and I can debug stuff. It's really great for that. Another thing this enables you to do is build confidently, right? Our AI tools are integrated into our profiler and diagnostic stuff. So I can say, hey, this frame, what's happening in this frame? This method is taking so long. Why? Tell me about it. And it can read that information and give me real insight. It can find bottlenecks in my project and help me fix those bottlenecks and give me further optimization information. So a lot of times when I'm just experiencing slowdown and I don't know why, now I can just say, tell me, let's figure this out. And then another thing that, again, I do a lot, and if anyone does Unity development, you build editor tools to help augment your workflows. And this is an editor tool. This video is one that I actually made where I needed to move the pivot point of a mesh. And so I said, hey, make an editor tool that allows me to modify the pivot point of a mesh. And it creates the tool, it creates the UI for me, and it made it really easy to get up and running to build these. It understands Unity's internal workings and how to do stuff with our asset pipelines. Now, there's a ton of more stuff coming. There's a ton of use cases. There's a ton of functionality, way more than I could talk about right here. But I did want to just leave on this slide and show you one thing that I think is cool. If you want to sign up for the beta, you can using that QR code. And while you're doing that, I did have this video. This is by and far my favorite use case, and I'm sure people have been here, where you get a project and you just want to remove all the unused assets. I don't want this massive project with all of these assets. I don't need any more. So I just went into the AI assistant and said, hey, move every asset that's not referenced in the scene into an unused folder. And it moved everything to a folder named unused, and I deleted the folder, and I saved gigabytes of size and everything, and it was just that simple to do. And so that was one of those like, okay, I really love this use case. This is great, and I want to talk about that. But now to talk more about the meta side of things, Zilmer, want to come up?
Thank you very much, Mike. That was great. And thank you very much, guys. I'm Dilmer Valecillos, developer advocate here at Meta. And I am really excited to talk about what we have for AI. Specifically, how many of you have used Oculus integration back when basically you had to drag and drop a folder? Let's see, raise your hands. Okay. So if you remember, that was I asked the same question last time at GDC. And the reason why I asked that is because things have been improving. After that, how many of you have used building blocks? So we have, okay, quite a bit of hands. Okay, so this iteration now is just think about how we went from dragging and dropping files into a folder to get the SDK set up. Then we have building blocks where you can drag and drop a camera rig, you can drag and drop a controller if you want to add hand tracking. It's making it easier. So the team asked me if I could basically prototype something with AI. I have never, I haven't been using AI as many other people have. So this was a really fun experience for me because I was able to see, okay, take it from Oculus integration to building blocks all the way to now using Claude Code with the Unity MCP that Mike just talked about. So At Meta, we have something called the Meta Unity MCP Extensions, and what that is basically a series of tools that build on top of the MCP that Unity built. Just think about things like adding a camera rig or adding an interaction rig where you can poke, where you can move around, have locomotion. So it's just a set of tools that Cloud Code basically will know or how to execute on behalf of our SDK. So as you guys can see here, this is a project that I created. I started with something very bare bones, and this is using the Unity Gateway, which exposes the Unity MCP. I'm using, if you guys were here for the previous session, they talk about interaction SDK. You saw how advanced or hand tracking solutions are. So in this case, I'm using Meta XR Core SDK and also Meta XR Interaction SDK. And also the extensions that we're making available, if you go to that link, that GitHub link will show you some of those extensions. And I know that we as developers, some of us like to use VS Code, some of us like to use Writer. Like we all have our preferred workflows. I wanted to go as bare bones as I could, so I ended up using Cloud Code CLI just to understand what it was gonna do. So this shows you here how I have a project set up. Basically, I'm installing the package. Then on the next slide is like, okay, now that I have the Unity component set up with the extensions, I need to also add it to the packet manager. Once I add it to the packet manager, you're gonna see the list of different actions that Cloud Code can actually execute. So the MCP for Unity can do things like, I want to add a game object, I want to create a prefab, I want to configure basically a mono behavior, it writes code for you. So there's a lot of different features available for you. For us, if you look at the extensions, we have Meta Add Camera Rig. That's like a very basic, where in the Oculus integration days, you had to drag it and drop it, figure out where the components were, what behaviors they had. The same thing with the grabbable. Like if you needed to implement a grab interaction, it was pretty tedious. You didn't really know what you needed to add. There were a lot of components associated with that. Then interaction rig, a lot more complicated. And we also have like update Android manifest. So this is like if I need permissions to be able to access the pass-through camera, then there's permissions on the Android manifest that need to apply. So these components also know about that. And then accepting MCP connections. In this case, I am using the CLI, so Unity needs to accept basically that communication. So I'm showing you how that works. And this screen right here shows you exactly, like if you have multiple, maybe you have VS Code or maybe you have a CLI connecting to the MCP, this is where you would go in and look at all of those connections. So, okay, so this is a very bare bone project. So I wanted to get into it, figured out how it works. I created a brand new project. And this is a simple prompt. I said, okay, can you add a camera rig? Can you also add a grabbable that is scaled at 10%? We're dealing with meters when it comes to VR, right? Like you don't want this gigantic cube to show up. So I told Cloud Code to say, hey, just scale it to 10%. The next thing is like, well, I want to test with the XR simulator. Can you activate it for me? So now, because the Unity MCP has access to all the menu items in Unity, it knows, it will scan it. It will find out, oh, what do I need to enable to basically activate the simulator? And can you actually play the scene for me? I mean, this is a simple task, but you can kind of see that workflow can actually save you a lot of time. So on the previous one, I did just one sentence, one prompt. You're talking to an LLM, so it's really smart to know, like if I want to create a camera rig. So this is a multiple prompt approach where each action, it's going to basically make a call. On the previous one, it was basically just a sentence to set up my grab interactions with the camera rig. So that's pretty bare bones, right? But let's say that you want to create a game, and that's how I started. I wanted to create a VR game, and I started with this big, long prompt, and I said, could you build me XYZ game? And I found out that it was, when you give it like too much information, it tends to make a lot of mistakes. So I started to change the approach, and I did, okay, let's do more of a development workflow where I start with a game mechanic. And this is how I approach this game, which I'm gonna show you here. So think about a game mechanic, something simple that you're gonna start with. Then you're gonna start thinking about, okay, what kind of prompts am I going to, I showed you before where I just told it to add a camera rig, add a grab interactor that I could basically use to grab objects, launch a simulator. But I wanted to do something cooler, so this is kind of the approach that I took. So we go from the game mechanic idea, we go to the prompt design. As we're designing those prompts, we basically look at the plan preview, which is what Cloud Code will give you and tell you that it's going to do. So it's kind of an iterative approach where you don't feel happy about it, so you start tweaking it depending on your use case. So on this sample, I created a bowling game not too long ago, and it was a tabletop bowling game. And when I did this was before joining Meta, and I basically built everything from scratch. It was all coded by hand. It was a tabletop. Basically, I pull the ball back, and then I aim at the bowling pins, and then if I hit it right, then, like bowling. So I started with that idea in mind. So in this case, I said, can you build a MetaQuest tracking pull ball mechanic to detect the thumb index pin? So I kind of knew what I wanted to implement, so I described it. And this was the first iteration, right? I already have a VR scene set up, which I did before. I have VR-specific code that I'm going to be creating based on this new prompt. Now I can detect the pinch. I know where the start of the pinch happens, and then when I pull it back, it's going to add velocity and force and launch the ball. But I don't like this look and feel, so I'm like, okay, this is the first iteration. This is a very simple mechanic, so I'm going to take it a step further. And I personally had a hard time learning how to create shaders and pretty advanced shaders, especially for VR, because you need to start thinking about single pass instancing and a stereo where you have to render multiple eyes. So when I asked this prompt, which is, can you add a futuristic glowing shader to the ball, and as I pull it, basically have a transition from one color to another. So I told her that. It worked. I was able to render it on one eye, but it didn't work when I pushed it to the MetaQuest. So I basically opened it up on MetaLink, which is what allows you to connect to a device as you're testing. And I'm like, oh, this is not working. So I told Claude, hey, this is not working. It's not rendering on both eyes. So he went in and implemented the correct, basically added all the macros, all the code that the shader needed in order for me to basically render that on multiple eyes, which was pretty powerful, especially because I didn't really have the time to learn how to create shaders early on. So this was a really great use case for that. And you can see the outlines here shows you what a Claude code added after the fact. So you're going to say, well, that's pretty simple, Dilmer. You just have a ball that you can pull back and you can throw, and there's a shader. So now that I had a project set up and I have VR features available, I extended the game. So now I wanted to create a game loop. And the game loop, you can read it in here. It's like, we're turning this VR prototype into a full game, spawn multiple rings over time that move towards the player in a straight line. I had a ring prefab. It basically is an object that comes towards the player. I'm going to show you on the next slide. And if so many of them pass through the player, then I'm going to decrement the points. And if 10 of them show up and I don't hit them when I'm aiming at them, I'm going to have like a game over, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see it here happening. So I told Claude, okay, go ahead and do that. And this is the results. So you can see that's the prompt that I showed you from the previous screen. It's fast speed, so I didn't want to have you guys weigh the whole thing. But you can see here the plans. So these are all the different game managers. This is all the different span locations where I told Claude to also create those prefabs. I told Claude to actually create an environment too that looked like, because the previous day I watched a movie called Tron, and I got really inspired by that movie. So that's why the look and feel of these kind of might remind you of that. I wanted to do something futuristic. And you can kind of see here, it's a very bare-bone UI. There is a glow and outlines on the environment, and I can basically shoot the rings. So that's cool, but I'm a game developer. I want to create something cooler. This is just a prototype. So I started thinking about other things that I wanted to do. And for instance, this is the bowling game that I created a while ago. It's a tabletop game. And you can see that there is kind of a trailing effect. As I pull the ball back, it shows you basically a line render. And as I pull it back, I can see the distance. I know that it's going to add more force. So I use that as a reference image to that prompt. I said, apply the trailing effect that looks like the reference images. Also draw a line at the starting point. And using that prompt plus the reference image, created this. And now it's like, okay, now I have an skeleton. I have the game mechanic that I wanted. I have the look and feel that I'm looking for. So iterated approach. So now if I go next, I wanted to also to be able to iterate faster. So for whatever reason, I thought XR Simulator didn't support hands, like if you want to detect hands or pinches. I thought it didn't support that. It turns out that it does. I just learned that recently. But anyways, I wanted to use XR Simulator to be able to test faster. So I told Cloud Code, hey, can you add controller support? The pull should start where the trigger button is held. So if I'm doing a pinch with a hand, I'm basically going to start calculating the distance from the point that the person starts pinching until the end. But with controllers, you need to change that approach, right? So I did it where the trigger button is held at that location, and as you pull it back, that's how it's going to detect how far the ball is going to launch. So again, I added a new feature. I added controller support. You can see Meta Link on the left side, but you'll see that on the right side, I can also test with controllers because I wanted to do fast iteration. I wanted to be able to test things faster. So anyways, my ideas started like sparkling, and I'm like, okay, I want to add multimodal support so that I could actually hold the controller with one hand and basically I can grab the ball or do something with my right hand. The reason why I thought about that is because if you guys go to the booth, I don't want to think about, oh, do you want to use hands or do you want to use controllers? I want to be able to give you the freedom to do the multiple inputs. Then I also wanted to add music because I love creating YouTube videos and I love the feeling of when something happens and you add sound effects, it just adds more immersion. So I added, second prompt is like, okay, add a audio manager, background music, so it handles those tedious things that we do on every game. It did it for me. Then I said, okay, well, the UI doesn't really look like how I wanted it to look like, so I said I changed the text from Mies 0 out of 10 rings, and basically create a progress bar, right? Like it goes down as you're losing points. And then I kept on adding more features and more features. And the results of that, honestly, I didn't want to stop because things were working really well. But the results of that is this. So music effects that's coming from the audio manager. Right now I'm using hand tracking. You can see the UI on the left side. These shader effects also came from another prompt that I told it to basically animate also the shader that I created. There's properties on the shader. Now I'm using controllers in this case. I'm also using multimodal, so I have the controller in one hand, and then I can also do the same feature, the same mechanic on the right hand by using hand tracking. And now using both controllers. Yeah, I think I have way too much fun with that. So that's the demo that I put together. And then I also wanted to use Immersive Debugger with AI. I ran out of time to do that, but it's really powerful. And this shows you a demo of how Immersive Debugger can also allow you to apply changes at runtime. So if I had an issue with a component that I were to grab, you can actually have Immersive Debugger running. You can use voice to tell Immersive Debugger, hey, can you fix this interactor? It's not working for whatever reason, and it's going to do the same thing that Claude is doing behind the scene. But I'm going to pass it over to Zach. He has some great things to talk about other features that we're going to show you.
Here we go. Amazing stuff. So my name is Zach. I am one of the AI developer tool leads for Horizon OS, and I actually really want to show you some of the stuff that we actually been working on. I'm an engineer myself, so I built a lot of these tools with our team, and I'm really proud of what we've actually accomplished. But first, I'm going to jump into what we've already done and what's available, and then also what we're releasing today. So quickly, we have AI documentation. Context is king for AI development tools. Giving it context helps with refactoring, helps with code editing. It is the biggest lift that you could provide. So we're making all of our developer documentation available in Markdown so that it's easily ingestible by all of your AI tools. On top of that, we're releasing a sitemap. It's an LM.txt. This is a standardized format. You can point your code editors or cursors or Claude codes, whatever, at developers.meta.com/LLMs.txt. It will be able to traverse our entire set of documentation on our website to find context. Even if you don't install any of our developer tools, we want to make this accessible as possible so that everyone's successful out of the gate. This is one of the biggest lifts that we could do for AI developers, I think, for our platform. But on top of that, we're also releasing the full LLM-TXT file. Probably doesn't matter to you directly, but this matters to the tools that you use to be able to index our entire website for the future, to make all of our content. Just even if you have Cursor and it uses the built-in web search tool, it's able to find content on our website that's accessible to all your development tools. All right, we also released this at MetaConnect not too long ago. This was the Horizon Dev MCP. It's part of the MetaQuest Developer Hub, and you can get access to it. It provides more AI-optimized searches for our documentation, but also device control. So you can wake your device, you can call ADB commands, gives you that first set of primitive access to your device to be able to automate it and get feedback from your device, do screenshots. If you have a multimodal model, it's able to interpret what's on the screen. This is the foundation of a lot of things that we're building. And it also works really well with the new Unity MCP server. So if you have them side by side, they actually complement each other incredibly well. Some of the tools there can play off of each other that we have available inside of there, including content search, which is really nice. All right. Now I'm really excited to show you what we've been building most recently in our team, trying to stay ahead of the trends in AI. Because the space is incredibly fast. MCP as a protocol only came out a year ago. And we're at this point now where we're learning new things about how to interact with developers and their tools and what's even popular. Some people aren't even using IDEs anymore. They're just using Claude Code. They don't even open them anymore. So we want to make things more accessible to all of these things. So one of the things that we're doing is we're releasing a new version of the Horizon Dev MCP. It's inside of this new standalone HCDB CLI command that we're releasing. But we're releasing a CLI tool. Because one of the things we're realizing is that people have been a little apprehensive about installing MCP tools because they can fill your context window. And so what turned out to be, kind of returning to old, really, really great is CLI tools. It turns out these agentic tools are really good about invoking CLI tools like Claude and everything else. So we wanted to take some of these heavy flows that we've had for developing with Quest out of some of the bigger GUI tools that we've been releasing before to put them now accessible as CLI tools, to more than even making them accessible to your agentic tools, but also you as humans. You can now script around them. You can put them in your CI environments. You can automate them. You can ask Claude to write a script around doing your common workflows that you're driving. But as part of this tool, we're giving you access to all of our developer documentation through a search interface. We're giving you all the device controls to automate things on device, run commands, install devices. And eventually, we want to complete this loop so that you can go through all the way through, and I'll talk about that in a minute. On top of that, we're releasing skills through our Agentic Tools repo, because that's another way people are approaching how to condense knowledge into repeatable patterns that they can use. And we're providing a bunch of those. We're putting 13 of them out there right now. They cover, as Joseph talked about in the beginning, things like helping you debug your applications or do your VRC checks before you release to make sure that your app is meeting all the requirements to get out. This is a tedious effort. Let the AI do it. You don't have to do it yourself. It's amazing. But everything from Unity best practices to common pitfalls to how to adopt new platform APIs, all of those are condensed into skills. You can just point it at the repo, and you can use anything to get access to that, from Cursor to Claude Code. You can add it as a Claude Code marketplace. You can add it as a Cursor plugin. You can access it via the new Skills CLI from Vercel. All of it is accessible to whatever tool set that you want to be able to get access to our published skills that we're putting out there. And then on top of that, we're releasing a VS Code compatible IDE extension, so it works with Cursor, VS Code, Anti-Gravity to some extent. Anti-Gravity needs to add some APIs for us to really plug in deeper, but across the gamut, we're going to get access to all the tools that you actually want to use to develop for, on top of, we already published an Android Studio plugin as well, and we'll tie into the Unity Assistant as well, so you can talk to all of our backend tools to talk to your device. So this got us really thinking about how, and I talked about this a little bit ago, but how we're thinking about tooling to make it accessible to everyone in the community. And part of that is rethinking how we're approaching it, not just MCP tools, by releasing CLI tools, by releasing hosted MCP tools to give you access to marketplace or to knowledge to basically supercharge your development environments that you already have to make them accessible. CLI tools are kind of the new meta, which, okay, I was required to make that joke. They're composable, they're reproducible, they're agentically accessible, but they're accessible to you. But that means that you have access to the entire platform. We want to get to a point where we're helping you complete this entire development loop. That's our goal as a team. Is we're starting out with making our platform accessible to your agents, but also you accessible, making your device accessible, and then giving you the tools and skills to ship your app to the store, get feedback about your crashes, let your agent see what those crashes are, fix them for you, help you ship the next release, keep the development lifecycle going that you have with all of your entire flow. But we want to help you with that code, those code reviews, the refactoring, the debug and test loops, the ship loop, everything. We want to make that incredibly easy for you. I'm really excited about this. I nerd out on this stuff. This is my domain. I love this stuff. With that, kind of closing it out, we really want your feedback to try these tools. We're putting them out there. The QR code, now it's up there, is available to give us feedback. We're also going to be at the big giant booth at the Expo Hall the rest of this week, so please come talk to us. If you've got questions, we'd love to hear them. You can also ask questions here, and we can lead right into that right now. So I think Q&A. Yeah.
So we got microphones. If people want to queue up at the microphones, why don't we start over here? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aaron from Alchemy Labs. So I'm just getting into this stuff as well. I feel your excitement about it. One thing I saw with in some of your demos or videos, you were showing making adjustments to the game in real time. And I'm just curious how that works. Can you like save it to code, or would you just experiment with it and then you know, ask the agent to do it for real in code and build?
Yeah, I can answer that question. That's a great question. Yeah, if you run with, the way that I tested it before is I run with MetaLink. So if you run it with MetaLink, basically you have the headset on, it's running, you see the scene. The way that I made it work is I just basically, if something is changed, I would copy the objects on the hierarchy, and then I would save that out. That way you can, like when the game stops running, you can see what really was modified or what was changed. The agent would also tell you what things he found, and you can also save that plan information, and that way you know exactly what to tweak.
Could you tell the agent to build a workflow for you to do all of that and then integrate it into your code?
Can you say that again?
Could you make the agent do all that?
Yeah, you could actually tell the agent to do all of that. Yeah, you're right, because he has access, he's an MCP, so he has access to Unity. Absolutely. Yep.
I would add to that too. You can also ask the agent to automate that workflow further, or to build an editor tool that recognizes what has been changed in play mode and save that out as a set. So absolutely.
Cool, I think we'll come over here. Yep.
Hi, thank you for the talk. My name is Paolo from Zenva. We teach people game development, including VR development. I have been using Cloud Code for a couple of months, but I constantly feel like I'm falling behind, that I'm barely scratching the surface of what it can do. And there seem to be 3 layers, and you guys are working on those 3 layers, and I'm unsure as to where you pick each one. What the layers that I mean are MCP servers, CLI tools, and also skills. I feel like there's a big overlap between the 3 of them, so any clarification would be amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. I think we were first in the AI space. We released MCP servers. They're the new hotness probably 6 months ago, and I think a lot of people realized very quickly that you can install too many MCP servers, and if you get like over 100 tools, it causes degradation in your performance of your AI agent in a lot of cases. And so there was also sort of an immediate, wait, did we ship MCP too fast attitude? And I don't think that's the case. I think MCP has a really good use case, especially when you want tools to be front and center. But skills are another way of doing like knowledge distillation into ways of like, it can be a sub-agent workflow. It can be making your agent just more knowledgeable about a subject than say a tool call can, which is what MCP does. And they can complement each other. You can have skills that rely upon specific MCP tools, as well as the tools that are built into your coding agent. And so in those ways that kind of overlap. Skills inherently work better when you can just like instruct them on a tool call. Like, and that can be a CLI tool call, or that can be an MCP tool call. So I don't think as a space we've like fully rationalized what the right answer is. There's a lot of people really gung-ho about skills. There's a lot of people really gung-ho about MCP tools. So we're gonna ship them all for you guys.
Yep.
And yeah, have fun.
And just to kind of add on that, Zach and team have done a great job of building all this out. So you can start with one of our pieces, and then it'll kind of eventually graduate you to other pieces. So if you just want to start with one of our skills, you can start there. If you want to start with the MCP, you can do that. You know, you can pick and choose how you start, and then it'll eventually progressively graduate you to all of the other pieces within the ecosystem.
Got it. Thank you.
Want to switch over here?
All right, so I'm one of the crazy guys who started doing this stuff like 2 months ago, and
Not crazy.
Codex controls my whole computer now.
Yeah.
I moved everything from Google Docs to Markdown files. So basically, I just give it the pipelines, and I tell it, do what you can, tell me what to do, or tell me what information you need, and it does stuff. One of the most annoying things, though, is like you can't get it to like play it and then diagnose it. And I saw this stuff like you can diagnose it in the headset. When can I get that?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Let's talk after if you want to come to the booth, and I can get you that answer.
Yeah.
But just to add to that, I did a lot of that when I was like doing the prototype, the diagnosis part, it's pretty incredible because it's also, Cloud also takes a screenshot. A lot of times things weren't working really well, so I was able to go and basically open the XRSIM or take a screenshot when I was running with MetaLink. And I was able to have that conversation in real time too, say, hey, the UI is not looking right, or can you add this other look and feel? And I was able to see it right on the headset. So yeah, so like the immersive debugger piece, one of the developers that built that, it's gonna be at the booth this week. So I think he'll appreciate if you come. His name is Lauren. So he would appreciate if you come by the booth and ask him more questions.
It's really cool.
And it works on Mac?
Yeah.
Anyway, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks.
Want to switch over here?
Hi, my name's Frank. We have been working on our VR game for 4 years. It's quite a big size of the project in terms of the coding and the engineer efforts. I have 2 questions. The first one is there any AI-based automation regression test? Because that is the really something take us a lot of time that really hopefully that we can have an AI-based with an XR simulator. This is first question. Second question was debugging, okay? Because our engineers spend tons of time trying to debug something, and we try Cloud Code and with the MCP to analyze that, but it still doesn't work. All right. Well, I don't know in what extent that we can think, okay, we can use AI in what, when it getting very complicated. I don't see the benefit, spend time, the ROI is pretty low in terms of debugging.
Yeah,
you wanna go ahead?
there's a couple of different things to this. I think one of the things that works really well is if you give your agent the tools to get the feedback that it needs to help you debug. And I think that's the part, even we're still like flushing out even more tools to help in this space, especially giving models like using computer use models that can actually see the UI and do perception and actually walk through the space, but things like immersive debugger, and that's one aspect of it, of like having extended play sessions with the headset on or off, like not taking it off and on constantly to be able to go through your iteration cycles. But I think that's one thing that it's definitely like there are reinforcement learning techniques of like navigating your app and getting there and like scripts to give it the ability to walk through whatever, like are you building a VR game, a 2D game, whatever, to get to that bug, to reproduce it. With what we have right now, and with some of the skills like VR debug skill, it does try to hint at like you can put log lines in and it can read the log lines to get a feedback loop. It's pretty primitive right now, but we're getting to a point where we'll have a more fleshed out end-to-end loop to help with a lot of these problems. Some of the stuff we can't talk about yet, but we're working on to help solve this because I think it's important.
It's a very active area for us, so we're deeply focused on it.
All right, thank you.
All right, want to switch over here?
Yeah, our team, we are building a game on Unreal. So my question is, do you have any plan to support more features with development on Unreal? We understand the blueprint might be a problem because for our current dev cycles, it's really a headache because Cloud Code just can't really read our blueprint because not all our code are C++. But without that context, it just misses a lot of important things and cannot really do the work. We are wondering what you think about Unreal Engine and agentic programming. And also, another question is, we actually run into some problems like you mentioned. You asked, like you mentioned in the example, you asked ask Claude to write a shader for you, but it just doesn't really run that correctly, especially in VR, because we find that while developing Cloud Code and other agents, they seem to do not know a lot of things about VR development or something about Quest. So they might give some answers that they consider correct for maybe other more generic games, but not really for VR games. So the second question is, how do we provide more context about developing games in Meta Quest or developing games for VR? Yeah, that's the two questions.
Yeah.
You want to start with?
Yeah. So on different SDKs, Unreal, one of the things our team is trying to do is provide generic tools that work regardless if you're building an Android 2D app, an Unreal or Unity app, at least from a generic. We're also doing deep dives on specific tools that we can build for specific build paths. I don't think we spent that much time yet on Unreal specifically. We spent a lot of time on Unity and Android 2D and Spatial SDK and some of the other SDKs that we provide. But on your second part of your question, on the first part, we are going to go there. I think it's just more of a matter of time. On the second part of your question on how do you provide that extra context. So one of the ways, we just open source the skills repo. It helps so much. If you just install those skills into your agentic environment, it immediately gives it a bigger breadth of knowledge of the platform and the limitations, the requirements immediately in all of your agentic tools. But if you want to provide your own, you can fork our agentic tools. You can add your extra context if you want to. If you want to like reduce some distraction that we have in there that talks about something that doesn't matter for your game, do it. It's a nice open source repo for doing that kind of iteration on what we provide in our skills repo. Oh. And if you've got good hints, send us a pull request.
Sorry, I didn't really remember the skills repo. Is it in the slides or will you post it?
Yeah, it's at MetaQuest, or it's at github.com/meta-quest/agentic tools.
I see. Thank you.
The product team named it. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, you want to?
I just wanted to add something to that. Like if you use the MetaQuest Developer Hub, there is an MCP there that I think actually you built the LLM text files and the documentation. So like when you're thinking about Unreal and how to give it more context, our documentation, and we show that today, it has a lot of information about what components are needed in Unreal, like how to develop VR experiences in Unreal. So I would recommend looking into the MCP that is available on MetaQuest Developer Hub. And that will give your AI superpowers about developing with our SDKs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Why don't we pop over here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi. I believe one of the less fun parts of game development is definitely profiling, especially GPU profiling on mobile devices. Yeah. So do you have any plans for tackling this issue and making it more convenient? So something like something that would work with RenderDoc, for example, or work as a substitute of it?
Sure. So, I mean, we have a whole next talk based or dedicated to performance optimization. And I'd encourage you to pay attention or to attend that talk. But Zach, you want to talk about some of the performance tools we're doing?
Yeah, one of the cool things that is in our current MCP server, as well as the HTTP MCP server, and there's a skill even for it, is Perfetto-based regression analysis that can help you with your game, like to find the jank that you have or find anywhere you have a frame stutter. It provides enough context. It's a time eater, but it provides enough context to your agentic tools to help it isolate like frame jitter, find the code that's causing it, and analyze it using Perfetto as a backend. And so it spins a Perfetto the process, it does traces on its own, it's able to like isolate down, and then even make the changes, depending on your coding environment, make the changes to your code to see if it actually fixed it, and then do another trace and analyze it. It's a amazing set of tools that fit right on top of the MCP that we already provide.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, hi there. I'm a producer who's very, green at coding and everything, getting really new to this. One of the things I wanted to ask with you guys putting out these new tools, I've been running into some issues when I'm using MCPs and everything where you guys are talking about automating it as much as possible, but I'm realizing that when you were talking about the MCPs with Claude and it starts doing the screen grabs, specifically with things like UI, it keeps thinking that it's doing the right thing when it really isn't. When it says, oh, this frame is completely in frame, and it's clearly being cut off. So I'm trying to figure out what are better ways, because I am getting to the point where I'm having to kind of sit down with these MCPs and like literally have to just surveil it the entire day.
Yeah.
So I want to know if you guys are providing best practices, anything, recommendations on those ends, because the biggest thing is I'm just realizing that it's making a lot of these assumptions that I'm having to correct over and over and over again. And I'm realizing I want to let it do its thing, but then I'm spending so much of my time just supervising it.
Definitely. I mean, this is one of the areas that we're looking to expand as far as our agentic workflows. So how do we transition from, okay, Claude can take a screenshot to Claude can actually understand the scene and understand the pivots in the scene and understand that, all right, I can navigate this way, that way, and really going back to how do we enable Claude to understand your intent to take action within that scene?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly right. One of the techniques is also using a simulator versus the real device, because there's less information overload. But part of it is, in a 3D scene, you can hand it to a multimodal model that's able to do sort of some amount of, we've moved past like CNNs and other techniques in AI, but to do perception of what they're looking at. We also have specialized models that are really good at 2D, not really good at 3D. But the overlap there in finding the right technique for like what is the best way. Does it make sense to do a whole scene dump of essentially the DOM of the entire render pipeline and having the AI analyze that versus a 2D bitmap? And it's one of the areas where we're currently actively trying to help developers like get in that loop so that they can help the model see what's actually on the screen in a little bit better way. Today, I would say throw it in a simulator. It's just it's a more restricted environment, so it's not going to have like what you were talking about, like it's just looking at the wrong thing and it's clipped off.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the big issues that I'm running into. So really, thank you for answering that. And then the last thing I was going to ask is with the workflows that you guys are adding, are you guys adding specifically any work practices for the prompting specifically on how to make calls to your system and everything within that, in the README files and things?
There are plenty of README files within like the Agentic tools repo that we released that, and it's mostly self-describing because they're all just markdown files in the end of the day. And so they can help you navigate, and there's big descriptions on things. We don't give like a prompt guide, more or less. That's actually some good feedback. We should think about that. Yeah, thank you.
Nope, thank you.
So I want to give one quick piece of practical advice too, because often you're running into that like, AI agent do this thing, and it's like, I did this thing, and it clearly did not do this thing, right? Try just saying, you're wrong, do better. That does work
Getting
really
angry
well
helps.
with the AI tools, because you want to like coach it along, but no, you see AI, you did this wrong. No, you're wrong, do better. And the AI goes, I'm wrong, okay. And it actually works really well to be firm with the AI. And everyone wants to be polite. Don't. Just tell it what you wanted to do and tell it when it's wrong.
I did notice capitalizing, it does help it when it's like, you did this wrong, and
Yes.
capitalizing it made a big difference. The other thing with what you're saying is it loves to just build the user interface with no back end to it a lot of the times. Which is a big problem that I keep running into. I tell it to build the tool, I go to use it, and I realize it's just a non-functioning interface.
Yeah, if you can create a feedback loop, it really helps of a test loop for it to validate, like, did I complete this task? So sometimes when you go into plan mode, you can say build it, it'll forget that it left a stub, and then, but if you give it a feedback, you must pass this test by the end of your loop. Then usually, yeah, like write me a UI automated test. Yeah.
Next.
Hi, thank you for the panel. I am not a VR dev, but I am a Unity dev, and I use Claude and various CLI tools and other LLMs on a daily basis now. I'm curious to what extent the tooling that you've developed is general purpose for a Unity workflow and would potentially be available for me as someone who is not actively using Quest device.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say our tooling is fairly Horizon OS specific. Like, we really want to accelerate people when they're building for our Quest devices. But the Unity AI Gateway, I mean, that's all generic, and that you would be able to use that for any of your Unity development needs. Mike, anything you want to add?
I would add that I couldn't hear the end of your question. I apologize.
Yeah,
So
I can rephrase it to make it more clear. So I'm just kind of curious to what extent some of these tools that are being developed by both Unity and Meta might be available to someone working in a more general purpose Unity environment where maybe they don't want to take advantage of the tools or the skills specifically for Quest or the other Meta environment. I'm not very familiar with the technology from Meta, but
yeah. So as I said, like the Unity tools obviously will get you very far into doing what you need to do within Unity without the context of, say, building for Meta devices. That being said, one of the strengths of Unity is cross-platform development, and what may not be a Meta thing now might be in the future. And so that's, again, where this tooling comes in. The access to the documentation and all of these things that they're building is going to make it so that if you do pivot, if you do say, you know what, actually, I do want to expand into a new market here, you're going to have all those capabilities.
Let me just add a little bit to that. So the Meta extensions package that we show you, that GitHub repo, you could basically now install that, and you're going to have all the goodies that the Unity AI Gateway gives you. So if you don't want to do meta development, you don't really need to do that. It's completely open source. Let's say down the line, you're like, well, I only want to add 2 features, or maybe you want to have a custom extension that might be applicable for your use case. That's the beauty of having those extensions also available, because you have full control, and you can fit in that into the cloud code. And basically, if you want to add it and extend it, or maybe you want to support, I don't want to say I want to support a different device, but if you want to support a different VR device at some point, we're going to give you a guideline of how that's implemented by using that open source project.
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Over here.
Hi there. I'm curious, as somebody who has fully adopted these tools, have their life changed changed by them. The one place where it seems to fall down is with prefabs of complication. Any layered prefabs or nested prefabs, especially when you have different triggers on them. I'm curious where, this is probably more of a question for the Unity team, where you see that going, where the development is going on that, if that's actively being worked on.
Yeah. So the question about prefabs and a lot of those things, I would ask you first, have you gone and forced prefabs and all those other things to be text files instead of binary files in your preferences?
Yes.
Okay, because that's crucial, otherwise you're going to be stuck
Yes.
there. So, I mean, obviously the tools are constantly being refined, constantly being improved. I'd be curious to know which cases you find aren't working well with prefabs with the AI stuff, because honestly, in my experience, it's worked really well. So I'd be curious what your workflows or how deep your chains of prefabs are. Maybe there's something breaking down there. But it's one of those things that we're constantly making improvements to the skills and the agent's abilities to manipulate the Unity workflows. But in terms of the AI side, the agent side, it just sees it as the XAML, right? Text files. If you have, in fact, confirmed you forced it to be text files, then the inheritance levels are kind of irrelevant to it. It doesn't see it like we do. So I'd be curious to know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, where we see it falling over, our project is, all of our prefabs were created before AI, so they're just deeply nested, layered, lots of different logic behind it. So where we see it fall over, sometimes it loses references, it structures the prefab in a way that is incorrect, and then we can go in and just undo it.
Sure. Yeah, again, that would be maybe an opportunity to give us some feedback, give us use case, and help us make the tools better.
Sure, appreciate it.
Sure, cool. Any, yeah.
Just one more question, driven to Mike, I think. Is ECS and dots still a thing? Because I never heard about them anymore. And working with XR, we're very worried about performance. And if I'm not doing the programming anymore, I just ask Claude to do. Maybe it's something I would try more often.
Sorry, you asked, is ECS still a thing?
Yes.
Exactly. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. No. Yes. ECS or DOTS, the data-oriented technology stack, is still very much a thing at Unity. You know, we don't talk about it from like a big marketing perspective because there's not like big feature pushes. It's just constant improvements. And yeah, the AI tools are really good at writing like ECS data-oriented code and stuff like that. So it's absolutely worth checking out. It's really good.
Thank you.
Over here, we've got time for a couple more questions.
Hi, I'm Richard from Rec, prior Meta. Just kind of had like a general like XR programming question that's been on my mind lately. So a lot of times when you're starting a project for like Quest headset, you have this decision you have to make. Are you going to go the OpenXR route? Or are you going to go like the Meta SDK route? You know, there's pros and cons, I think, of going one way or another, like with the XR interaction toolkit. But let's say you decide to go like Meta SDK and start building with that, but now you want to bring it to other headsets. Is it possible to take everything you've built using the Meta SDK and like maybe like the UI interactions, make that work with other OpenXR? Because I feel like there's this kind of like thinking that like if you build with Meta SDK, you can't port it to other headsets.
So
I don't have too much experience with that, but I just wanted to kind of get like a general. And like if it is difficult to switch from like Meta SDK to like, you know, XRI, is like the newer tools that are out there, like is it like a lot easier to maybe help you with making that transition if you did need to make that transition?
Sure. I mean, I don't have a lot of information on being able to migrate to non-Meta headsets. In general, you know, I'd say the Meta SDK should be compatible. But that would be something that you would need to explore. And you know, certainly by using these tools, you'd be able to leverage all of our documentation and kind of find all of the different places that you know we are providing integration and kind of use that as a baseline for coming up with your migration path.
Yeah, and I know more recently, like there's been a lot of transitions with the Meta SDK to OpenXR, like the hand tracking is like using the OpenXR skeleton. I don't fully understand you know, how all of that's working in the back end, but I know that there is kind of like a migration to kind of standardize things, but yeah, if you had more.
Yeah, I can. I know what you're asking. Like I went through that route, like trying to make Meta SDKs work across devices. So we are recommending developers to use OpenXR. Like you go into the project settings, enable OpenXR. But if you truly want to, maybe you want to support Pico or you want to support another device, I think XRI, in my opinion, unless you really need a supported feature that the platform offers, then definitely go Meta SDK because you're going to get advantage of interaction SDK, haptics, and there's just a lot of features in there. But if there are features that you could be okay, because the XRI supports hand tracking, they do it quite well. There's gesture recognition in their new versions. So I guess it really depends, like, what features are you willing to leave just because you want to support XRI versus the SDKs that we offer?
Like for instance, like the UI stuff, I really like the UI with the Meta SDK. Is it possible to like convert that to work with XRI? Have people done stuff like that in the past? Or maybe nowadays it's easier using these AI tools that can help you?
I think we have David here that can answer that question on the back. So yeah, let's talk. Let's talk after the fact, and then we have some engineers here that can also help you with that.
Okay, thank you.
And one last question.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. I just was wondering if you have any generalized sort of information, workflows, best practices to go with this, because these are all great tools to feed to it if you know all the things that you need to do. But like what I find is I feel like I'm sitting over another developer, telling them what to do, and then waiting. Oh, and then I do all the QA, and then I give it more things. You did this wrong, you did that. So like even just knowing like this is telling it how something's wrong, so it fixes it right instead of asking it 6 different times and spending an hour waiting there. Like, some things are amazing and other things are just like, this is monotonous and crazy. So that would be great if you have some sort of like best practices to set it up right, how to act or prompt it to do things better. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's one of the things we were trying to distill into the Agentic tools repo that we've open sourced is at least some of the best practices, at least ones we've noticed from either our internal testing or watching other people sometimes just struggle and then writing it up in documentation. I wouldn't say we have a full breadth of all the different things you might run into yet. We're releasing like 13 right now of these like high-level skills, but it's one of the ways to do that. Some of these are going to be specific to the SDKs, the environment that you're in. We're not going to be able to cover them all. They might be part of your scene. They might be so. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Mark.
So, and I'd just say if folks have more questions, we can hang out here a little bit. We're going to be down at the booth in the expo hall all week. Please come talk to us, engage with us. We're very excited about these tools. We're excited about supporting your workflows, and we'll chat with you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.